Let's get part two right started. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change will be hosting a conference of party COP28 between November 30 and December 12 in Dubai. On the sideline of the summit will be a side event on the impact of climate change on mental health. Well, the climate change realities really have an impact on mental health. Let's have this conversation with Sunday Atobatele, who is management and health consultant. Thank you, Sunday, for coming to Newsnight.
Thank you so much for having me.
A number of people will be surprised when you mention climate change and its relation to mental health. Speak to us about the connection between climate change and mental health.
Thank you very much for that. So if you consider the concept of climate change and you look at it in the practicality of what we have in Nigeria. So first, you're looking at the long-term effects in terms of increased temperature, reduced temperature otherwise. And recently, there has been a lot of news about the flooding that has happened and how that has moved people from their residence away from their locations. What people consider is really the financial effect. So people are losing properties, people getting relocated, but nobody is talking about how those people are settling into the new environments that they're going to.
Right.
Nobody is talking about the long-term effects, change of culture in terms of getting into new places, what it takes to lose everything and then start building afresh. So what we're looking at is how do you look at the convergence, the relationship between the long-term effect, the climate change, and then the mental health of the people that are experiencing this. Of course, it's a spectrum, and then this affects people to different extents. You're looking at the age of the people, the younger or the older generation being a lot more affected than the middle-aged, which easily integrate into other communities. You're looking at the socioeconomic status. You're looking at the financial status of these people. The more affluent being a lot more easily integrated or settled into other locations than the people with some financial difficulties.
I was even coming to that, because when you talk about climate change and then you're beginning to relate it to mental health, I see in that spectrum, I see the domino effect, when you begin to talk about mental health. What about, and then people settling from one place to the other, trying to reintegrate. Then what about family disintegration? How does that impact on family disintegration?
So it's, it's more peculiar in a country like Nigeria, where, the efforts put into relocating victims of flooding, for instance, they are not completely at a communal level, at an integral level that takes the family as a unit. It's usually looking at how do you address individuals. So for instance, you have a community or you have a family that is experiencing flooding, they've lost their household. So you then have maybe the father going to stay with someone, you have the mother going to stay with someone else. You have the children moving to stay with relatives at different locations. So the family unit is already separated. And nobody is looking into how those people settle into where they are. In fact, there is a report about Nigeria that says 3 out of 4 people that need mental health support do not get access to it. Of course, given where we are in the spectrum of primary health care and then care for the person as a whole. So those are some of the concerns that we are looking at in terms of how do you address this holistically so that you're not just coming with one thing, you're not coming with just financial support to them. You're not just relocating them and that's it. What happens over the next 1 or 2 years? How do you help these people set to rebuild their life and then continue to move on?
And in that regard, you also want to look at how their productivity is impacted, how their economic stability is affected, So then, how then does that speak to our collective economic prosperity as a nation?
Absolutely. So when you look at these problems, the issue is always that things are being addressed in an isolated manner. You've mentioned the economic prosperity, you've mentioned the productivity of the individuals, but when these things are being addressed, you separate them. You take the individual as a unit and then you address, education, for instance. Those schools that are in those places that have been affected, the financial support that these people get to go to those schools, how do you reinstate that? How do you help them fit in? Those that are working in these locations, you've displaced them. They are either maybe not at proximal locations to their work, or they are struggling with other issues that they can't even speak to. So you still see people turn up at work, but they have a lot of issues, psychological issues that they are addressing, a lot of challenges that are facing as an individual. And that inadvertently, it reduces the productivity. So how do you help these people? And when you look at it as a country, you're looking at how do you increase the productivity of your population? How do you make sure that things that drive people down, things that weigh people down that you can't necessarily quantify by just interacting with them, how do you provide that support to them so that you're making sure that at the community level, at the population level, at the country level, you're just increasing the health and well-being of people and ultimately increasing their productivity?
Thank you, Sunday. We don't have the luxury of time. It's just unfortunate that majority of the countries who are actually contributing to the damages of the climate change are not doing enough to ameliorate the sufferings of the people. Thank you, Sunday Atobatele, management expert, for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me.